Welcome back to Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life, the podcast. You're listening to 5 Minute Fridays with Coach Myrna. Today, I want to talk about a book that I've just read. It's called My Bondage and My Freedom by Frederick Douglass. Now, the reason I wanted to share this with you is that we're celebrating Black History Month this February, and this is predominantly Black history. This is where the movement started with Booker T. Washington and Frederick Douglass. Now, I started off by reviewing Booker T. Washington's book, Up from Slavery, last week. And today I want to talk about My Bondage and My Freedom by Frederick Douglass. We need to keep the conversations about our Black ancestors, what they did for our movement in this climate and times right now. So, Frederick Douglass, My Bondage and My Freedom, was published in 1855. It is a powerful and unflinching narrative of his life as a slave and his journey to becoming one of America's most influential abolitionists. This memoir builds upon his earlier work called The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, offering deeper reflections on his experience and expanding on his thoughts about slavery, freedom, and racial inequality. Douglas' account serves as both a personal testimony and a scathing indictment of the institution of slavery. So let's get started. Born in Talbot County, Maryland, in 1818, Frederick Douglass was separated from his mother, Harriet Bailey, at an early age. His father was likely his white slave master, though this fact was never proven, a common practice that underscored the dehumanization of enslaved people. Douglass vividly recounts the brutal conditions of his early years, including hunger, inadequate clothing, and constant fear of being taken away from his grandmother. When he got bigger, around age of 8 years old, he was sent to live in the big house to work in the kitchen. His grandmother took him there and told him to go play with the kids while he played. And while he played with the kids, she disappeared. She did not want to tell him goodbye because she knows that he would cry and he would be upset. So she disappeared when he wasn't looking. He cried for hours. And guess what? He never saw her again. The cook in the kitchen was very cruel to him. She beat him and starved him all the time. One night, he recalled he was so cold and hungry that he stole a piece of corn and attempted to roast it in the ashes in the fireplace. And like an angel of mercy, his mother showed up and comforted him. She held him in her arms and gave him a cake to eat. His mother, after he went, he never saw her while he lived with his grandmother. But when she came to the big house, he came to visit him. She came to visit him a couple of times. And this was the first time that he had seen her. He said that she had to walk 12 miles from her plantation to his and 12 miles back because there was no ride for her. His mother, unfortunately, took sick and died shortly after he met her, maybe 2 or 3 times, and then she died. He noticed that the slave owners did not even allow her kids or her mother to visit her when she was sick and dying. So she died alone. Frederick Douglass shared several other details of his childhood experiences in slavery. One of the most harrowing aspects of his childhood was witnessing the savage beating of his Aunt Hester, a traumatic event that marked his first encounter with violence in slavery and opened up his eyes to the psychology of slavery. He told a story that Aunt Esther fell in love with another slave, and the master did not want his slaves to have any semblance of a normal life or happiness. So he forbade Aunt Hester to see this fellow. She disobeyed and continued seeing him, feeling that it was her life. The master decided to show her who was really in charge. He tied her to a tree and whipped her until all the skin came off of her back. While she pleaded, "Me not do it no more, have mercy, me not do it no more, have mercy," did not stop. And Frederick Douglass watched this through peeping through a hole in the wall while this happened. Douglass described how enslaved people were treated like livestock, subjected to back-breaking labor, and denied basic human rights. They had to work in the field from 5 a.m. to late into the night. And women were not even given time to feed their children. They had to keep them in the side of the field so that they can sneak by, for about 5 or 10 minutes to feed their kid, because they never got time to go back to the house to feed their babies. Despite this, he emphasized their resilience and the deep bonds they formed to survive the horrors of plantation life. Now, the turning point, why we're reading about him now. So Douglas' life changed when he was sent to Baltimore to live with the Ault family. He mentioned that he was one of hundreds of kids, and they don't know why they chose him, but God knew, right? So he was was not sent to the field. He was sent to Baltimore to live in quite comfortable life with the Ault family. The Ault family had a boy, and he became his slave. The wife of this new enslaver treated him with kindness and began teaching him to read. However, as soon as her husband found out what she was doing, her husband's admonition that literacy would make Douglass unfit for slavery led her to stop the lessons and made sure that he didn't sneak around. She watched him constantly. But where there's a will, there's a way. And Douglass realized that this was his way out. He knew that if the slave master did not want him to learn to read, then that's definitely what he needed to do. And this was the pivotal moment. He understood that education was the key to freedom. So he continued to learn secretly, trading bread with the poor white children in exchange for reading lessons. Douglass' growing knowledge fueled his hatred of slavery and his desire for liberation. Just exactly what the slave master was afraid of. Yes, education takes you out of ignorance and makes you want more of your life than to be a slave. He read newspapers, political essays, and abolitionist literature, which deepened his understanding of the world and his conviction that slavery was not only morally wrong, but a grave injustice. As Douglass matured, he became increasingly defiant. So his master sent him to live for a year with Edward Covey, called the slave breaker. He was a boy of about 16 years old at the time, and he said that Covey started whipping him for no reason a couple of days after he got to his plantation. One day, Covey took him to the woods and told him to strip for a beating, and he refused to take his clothes off. He said that Covey ripped his clothes off and proceeded to beat him mercilessly. By the end of the year, Covey had succeeded in breaking him. His spirit was broken, and he hated the thought that he was a slave for life. He contemplated suicide. After Covey, Douglass had many masters. Some treated him nicely, but the nicer he got treated, he said, the more he thought of running away and liberty. One time, he and 4 other slaves planned to run away, but on the morning that they were set to leave, the white slave trackers came and discovered their plot without even having any proof of it, just because someone told them. They hauled them off, tied it to a horse, and had them walk for 15 miles barefoot behind a horse to the courthouse. And on the way, he said that the white people laughed and jeered at them. Luckily for him, he wasn't sent to the South as he thought that he was going to. His master bought him back and actually sent him back to Baltimore. In 1838, Douglass actually succeeded with running away as an escaped slave. He escaped slavery by disguising himself as a sailor and traveling north via the Underground Railroad. He eventually settled in New Bedford, Massachusetts, with his wife, Anna Murray, a free Black woman that he met in Baltimore, who supported his escape. In the North, Douglass became a prominent speaker and writer for the abolitionist cause. His eloquence and firsthand experience made him a powerful advocate against slavery. My Bondage and My Freedom not only recounts his personal journey, but also critiques the hypocrisy of a nation that claimed to value freedom in the Constitution while perpetuating slavery. Douglass highlights the complicity of the church in maintaining the institution of slavery and condemns the racial prejudice that persisted even in the free states. He also addresses the challenges he faced as a free Black man, including discrimination and threats to his safety. He stated that on arriving in New York after running away, he had no money, no food, and could not trust either Black or white people. He could not look for work because his owner had slave trackers looking for him. He could not trust Black people because they would sell him for the $2 reward money. He could not trust white people because all they wanted to do was send him back as a slave. He was physically free, but still mentally in bondage. One day, he said, because he learned, how to read people, he decided to finally trust a Black man because he was starving, homeless, didn't have any place to go, couldn't even go to a hotel, he was sleeping on the streets. He decided to trust a Black man who looked trustworthy, and it worked out to his advantage. The man was indeed trustworthy, took him to his home and hid him and introduced him to the abolitionist who was there to help runaway slaves. They put him on a ship and sent him to New Bedford, Massachusetts, where he found work, got married, and started his life as a free man. After going to meetings with abolitionists where he started speaking and telling firsthand his knowledge of slavery. As he became known, he feared that the slave owner would come and kidnap him back into slavery because he had to tell them where he ran away from. He had to tell him his owner's name so he was easily tracked. He was so scared for his life that his friends sent him to live in London to be safe. He told how incredible it was to eat at the same table with other white folks, that he was never once told, "There's no niggers allowed in here," not once. And he heard that everywhere in America. After staying in London for about 2 years, he returned home to the United States a free man. His friends paid $150 to purchase his freedom. He remarked how America, with her blue skies, had the blackest of heart, while London, with her gray skies, had a bright heart. So, in reflection, My Bondage and My Freedom is more than a memoir. It is a call to action. Douglass reflections on the dehumanizing aspects of slavery extend beyond his own experiences to expose the moral and social rot it inflicted on American society. He argues that true freedom requires not only the abolition of slavery, but also the dismantling of racism and the affirmation of Black dignity and equality. The book's enduring power lies in Douglass's ability to blend personal narrative with incisive social commentary. His life story is a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the transformative power of education and resistance. So, in conclusion, Frederick Douglass's My Bondage and My Freedom remains a crucial text of understanding the horrors of slavery and enduring struggle for justice. Through vivid storytelling and uncompromising truth-telling, Douglass not only documents his own journey from bondage to freedom, but also challenges readers to confront the legacy of slavery and continue the fight for equality. Now, I had to share this with you because this was a brief summary, but oh my gosh, my eyes were so open to what our ancestors went through as slaves, coming right from the horse's mouth, coming right from somebody that was born into slavery and endured it for half of his life. So go pick up a copy of this book. You can get it for free by just searching for it on YouTube, which is where I found it. So they're trying to take this information out of the schools because they don't want you to read this stuff. But I'm sharing it with you because I want to introduce you to the concept. I want to introduce you to these works, and I want to remember Black history. So thanks again for tuning in to this week's episode of 5-Minute Fridays with Coach Myrna, and for celebrating Black history and what our ancestors had to go through so that we can be free. Thanks for tuning in. Leave comments. Please share this. Please like and comment and share it. Once again, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, namaste.